2, 1, go. Hi everybody, we're going to talk about ferns today. There's a lot of different kinds of ferns and it's hard to talk about every single one of them. So I just am kind of picking like a few that I think are common or maybe that I just really like, that are new to us, things like that. I consider ferns to be in the medium to difficult category. It kind of depends on the fern, as you'll find out. And they're all, even though it's all the same kind of plant, we're still talking about a very wide variety of different care and quirks, and there's just so many different kinds, it's hard to just even wrap your head around them. But generally, ferns are going to be, they're going to need a lot of water, they're going to need moisture, and they're going to be low to medium indirect light. They can take bright indirect actually, and they do pretty good. They just don't really want any direct sun, and of course that depends on the fern. Like above me here, the Kimberly Queen, this can take a lot of light. You'd be surprised how much bright, almost direct sun a Kimberly Queen fern can take. So if you like the look of ferns, but say, you know, maybe you have too much light, which is not a problem many people have, but maybe out there somebody has too much light, that is a great choice of fern for you. So in general, ferns are low light with a few exceptions. They need a lot of water, and an important thing to remember when watering ferns is you're not keeping it wet all the time. You're just trying to not let it dry out. So I know that sounds weird, but as soon as the surface is dry, you're gonna water. Now, I don't mean dry like as in bone dry, I just mean as soon as you feel that there isn't a ton of moisture in that top surface, then it's time to water. You can overwater a fern, it's possible. Say you are watering it every day, or you put it in a pot that doesn't have drainage, it still can experience root rot, fungal issues, and just general problems if it's overwatered. So it's important that the roots do get some oxygen. A lot of times ferns are planted in a little bit more sort of organic matter rich soil, and that tends to hold water, but it also breathes because the chunks tend to be a little bit bigger than you'd find in like a soil that's, you know, perlite and little bits of peat and maybe a little bit of grit in there. So know that a lot of times the soil that a fern that you buy, you know, here at Ritter's, it's in a soil that holds a lot more moisture than maybe another soil that, you know, your Monstera you bought might be in. So just be aware of that soil difference. And ferns do prefer soils like that. There's nothing wrong with regular potting soil for a fern. You can find mixes for ferns that are a little bit higher, maybe in cocoa coir or peat moss, and they do like that, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with potting them in potting soil. I like to kind of take the easy route, and the easiest thing for me is to just have a bag of potting soil at home and use it on everything and adjust my watering. But maybe you like to be a little bit more special with your plants and, you know, get special soils and such, and if you want to do that, just find one that's based with cocoa coir or sometimes cocoa peat. You'll find soil that says cocoa peat on it, or just any peat moss based soil that's low in perlite. So anyways, back to the watering thing. The best way that I have found to keep ferns alive, because I am a forgetful waterer, and I know that many of you probably have that problem also. I get a cute watering can, you know, like say you have your fern on your plant shelf, you get a cute watering can and you set that right next to your fern, and that way every time you walk by your fern, you touch it, and if the surface feels dry, you water it. And then there's no like, oh, I gotta go all the way to the sink and get water, and then you forget. Maybe you're not like me, but that's how I am. So I always keep something right next to it because it's just the easiest way to make sure it gets water. So moving on to fertilizer, ferns are pretty aggressive feeders. They put out a lot of green growth. They grow pretty quickly. Again, it's going to vary between ferns. You know, as we know, staghorn ferns don't grow very quickly, and something like a macho fern, which I'm looking at, but I didn't grab it. Macho ferns get like 6 feet. They're beautiful. That grows really quickly, so it's going to need a little bit more food. Again, we're still only feeding March through September, but you're going to be feeding the highest labeled rate for indoor plants. So I think on the jacks, it's a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon every 2 weeks, or a 1/2 teaspoon once a month. Don't quote me on that. Something like that. So you're just going to follow the highest labeled rate on the fertilizer that you prefer. I like soluble fertilizers for ferns because it's very quick, it's there, it's ready. They can get to it immediately, and they need that. So that's important. A little bit more detail on lighting. Every fern is a little different. I have found that grouping ferns, kind of like this fern is similar to this fern, has been the easiest way for me to kind of deal with taking care of ferns. So like I have a few down here. Okay, so there's these 3 here. So I've got a heart fern, I've got an eyelash fern, which I love, and I've got a button fern. I like to group these together in terms of light and water, because they all have a very low threshold for going crispy, meaning it doesn't take much time being dry, and it doesn't take much dryness for these to just completely go topside. That also means that putting them in a low light or a very indirect light situation is going to be better. These ferns I've noticed seem to do way better when they have less light. They kind of bleach out. I would put maidenhair ferns in this group also. That's probably one of the most common ferns. And so these are going to be high water. They need humidity. It's important to mist them with a mister, or you can do the plastic container with the rocks and a little bit of water and set your ferns on top. And that evaporation will bring the water that's been evaporated past the leaves as it evaporates, and kind of create an area of ambient humidity. So that's one group. I like to group like any of these. So this is kangaroo paw, and then here I've got a crocodile fern, and both of these are sort of footed ferns, as you'd call them. Rabbit's foot's another option, which we also have. I consider those almost on the opposite side of the spectrum, not necessarily in terms of light, but in terms of care. They're way more tolerant to drought, way more tolerant to lack of humidity. They can tolerate a little bit more light, actually, and they're just an easier fern to take care of. If I was going to take a fern home, because I don't like to dote over plants, that's probably the fern I would pick, is a kangaroo paw fern. So that's the footed ferns. Then I have a few more that I grabbed. Bird nest ferns, which I actually have some right here too. There's a lot of different kinds of bird nest ferns. I've noticed that they are also kind of in that drought tolerant category. And I don't literally mean drought tolerant, I just mean they can take a little bit more dryness than maybe like, you know, a heart fern. So the only difference there is they really like humidity. They come from pretty humid regions. So I would certainly have a mister, maybe your bed of rocks, however you do it, they need extra humidity. I've also got a staghorn fern. And these guys are interesting. They can actually get pretty dry. They're a fern, but they're different than most ferns. They can get pretty dry. They don't like it, but they can. And excuse me. They will do best in lower light, but they can take kind of indirect bright, and they will like extra humidity. Staghorn ferns, brighter light, but still not very bright. They can go a little bit drier. They need humidity. I grabbed an asparagus fern. These are fun. I love these for their chartreuse new growth. These are pretty tough, I think, but they don't like to dry out, as with any other fern. But they're a little bit sensitive to it. They can get little brown tips pretty easily, just from a little, like, you know, just a couple hours of drought. Okay, so last one is the bean fern. And I don't know if it's zoomed in enough, but I just got this because I like it. It's new to us. I'm thinking that it's gonna probably not want to dry out. There it goes. I really like this fern. I think it's fun and cute and unique. I just wanted to show it to you guys, I guess. I'm trying to think if there's any others. I'm gonna grab that macho fern. Okay, this is the macho fern, and it's got these big giant leaves, and that's a big fern. They can get like 6 feet tall and wide in your house. So if you want a big lush plant, macho fern. What other cool ones do we have right now? These are pretty tough too in terms of drought and dryness tolerance. This is a zebra fern. I really like that one. This is kind of new. I haven't seen these around a lot. This is Nicholas diamond fern. This is a footed fern, so it's going to be in that kind of like what I call a tougher category. I mean, they're all ferns. They all like water. They all like low light, but I consider that one a tougher category. Related to the asparagus fern, you get your foxtail fern. I don't know. There's just so many. Of course, consult us with any questions on some specific fern that maybe I didn't touch on. I wish I could talk about all of them, but take me a long time. So feel free to ask any questions, and I hope this was informative. Remember, water can next to your fern, humidity, low light, never let them go dry, but you can overwater them, believe it or not. I think that sums it up. I hope you're all doing okay, and I hope to see you in soon.